With many of the world's leaders losing their minds right now, top three on the list, definitely Zelenskyy of Ukraine, Trudeau of Canada, and Keir Starmer of the UK. Why not check out a clip of Vladimir Putin of Russia and his opinion on why Zelenskyy won't sit down at the negotiating table? Now, I gotta be honest, before I watched the clip, I didn't know exactly what he was gonna say. But after I saw the whole thing, I actually agree with him. So let's check it out, and I'll share my thoughts after.
Finally, he has cornered himself with the decree banning negotiations with the Russian Federation on a peace agreement. Why? Because if negotiations were to begin, sooner or later, and most likely quite quickly, it would lead to the need to lift martial law. And as soon as that happens, elections must be held immediately. There would no longer be any grounds for not holding elections, as the current justification for not conducting elections in Ukraine is the presence of martial law. But if negotiations take place, followed by the likely quick necessity of lifting martial law, elections would have to be held right away. And that's where the current head of the regime faces a problem. His rating is exactly half that of his closest potential political rival. The current head of the regime has absolutely no chance of winning the election.
Those are called facts. Now, Putin is definitely projecting here. I'll talk about that in a second. But Zelenskyy realizes the truth. If he gives up the martial law, he will lose the election. The Ukrainian people do not want this guy in there anymore. And his political opponent is absolutely crushing him in the polls. So he needs to continue this conflict in order to stay in power. But here is the big problem as of only 1 week ago. He no longer has the backing of the United States of America. See, he could have fought a war indefinitely with the backing of the United States of America. And this is why elections are so important. Because if Kamala Harris got into that office, Ukraine would have been funneled hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of more dollars over the next 4 years, including weaponry. Zelenskyy would be the president for the next 4 years. United States citizens would be giving up their taxpayer money, and we would just have this ongoing, never-ending war, and Zelenskyy would love it. But right now, the backing from the United States is gone. There is no more weapons going to the Ukraine. There is no more money going to the Ukraine. And the European countries cannot sustain Ukraine. They don't have the money. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the will. This is why even Keir Starmer is coming out and saying, we cannot do this without the United States. I guarantee you, the European leaders are sitting in the back rooms with Zelenskyy, telling him, Zelenskyy, we're going to support you, right? For whatever crazy reasons they have. But we're going to tell you the truth. If you don't have the United States, this isn't going to go good for you. There's no way you're going to win this. You're going to run out of men. You're going to run out of money. You're going to run out of weapons. So Zelenskyy is between a rock and a hard place right now. If he doesn't do the negotiations, if he doesn't sit down at the peace table, he's going to lose everything. I mean, is there anything worse than that for the leader of a country? I mean, think about the ramifications for Ukraine after they utterly lose this thing. The hard place is, if he does sit down at the negotiation tables and gets a peace deal, he's going to have to lift the martial law. Putin is absolutely correct here. And when he lifts the martial law and they hold the elections, he is going to lose, barring insane corruption at the election ballots, which is very possible in the Ukraine, just so everyone's aware of this. This is not something that would be unprecedented or unheard of from political leaders. He may try to squash his political opponents. He could possibly even try to kill them or arrest them, imprison them, something like that. Now, this is where I get to the point where Putin is projecting, because Putin does the same thing in Russia. Putin's hands are not clean. His political opponents die all the time. They die from poisoning, they go to prisons. Also, the elections that Russia has had are absolutely fraudulent. He gets 85% of the vote and the numbers don't make sense. They don't line up. There's individuals who are political opponents of his who have a chance of beating him, and then all of a sudden they're not on the ballot anymore because of their signatures weren't correct or something. I mean, this is real things that have happened in Russia. So he's definitely projecting here on Zelenskyy. He's not clean himself, but it doesn't make what he's saying no less correct. It is, in fact, correct. And there are reports coming out right now that it looks like Zelenskyy is probably going to lean towards the direction of the negotiated peace. And you want to know another thing, and this is why you want to wait to the end of these videos, because sometimes nuggets like this come out. And I know what I'm going to tell you, many of you already know it. And I'm going to say it and you're going to go, of course, I already knew that. But I do think it's important to bring it up as a reminder. And maybe you haven't thought of this before. Consider if Kamala Harris was doing the same exact thing that Donald Trump was doing right now, taking a hard-lined, no-games approach at peace in the Ukraine. And she met with Zelenskyy and said, Zelenskyy, we are going to sit down and we are going to end this war. If Kamala came out and did this, do you know what the media would be doing right now? They would be fawning over her as the woman of the century, the woman of the millennia. They would say, see what happens when you have a woman in charge. She goes for peace, for negotiated deals, for ending war. These men who have been in charge, and they've been leading us down these paths of destruction and conflict, but not a woman, not when she's in charge. They would be playing it over and over again, and they would just be lighting up in glee at how amazing she appeared and how she stood up to Zelenskyy, a man, and she was leading. But when Trump does it, or really he does anything, let's get the talking points out and let's crush this guy as much as we can, even though he's doing exactly the right thing and the thing that the world needs to be done right now. What do you all think about this? As always, leave your comments below. I love to read them. I'll catch you guys on the next one.